He puts his finger in my face and he goes, son, let me tell you something. If I treated my cancer the way you have treated racing in your life, I would have been dead 5 effing years ago.
Wow.
Turns around, walks away, does not say another word. Here's this life event that has changed the trajectory of my life. It has kept me down for a while. I was upset about it. It's something we live with on a daily basis. My dad's quality of life has been altered. And here he is telling me to just get it together. Like, what are you doing?
It's the Kenny Wallace Conversation, brought to you by JEGS.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Kenny Conversation, brought to you by JEGS, the leader in high-performance aftermarket car parts. Remember to go to jegs.com if you want to fix your vehicle up. Truck, car, it doesn't matter. Well, all right, this is most likely the most intriguing, the most interesting Kenny Conversation I've ever done in my life. Please welcome in the man that made national news on Twitter about 2 weeks ago, Stephen Mallozzi. Stephen, how you doing?
Good, Kenny. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing really good. We were talking right before we came on the air. And, when I was a kid growing up in school, my last name was Wallace. Of course, they tried to get me and they'd call me Wall-ass. And we went through that. So I was talking to you. I said, is it Stephen or Stephen? You said it's Stephen. But tell the story about Mallozzi or Mallozzi. How did they hatchet your name up early in your racing career?
So I have heard everything, Kenny. So the worst one was Mallozzi. I don't even know how you get that far off, to be honest with you. But the popular one was Mallozzi, and that's because when I was a kart racer, everybody knew me. There was a commentator who was like really reputable, well-known, national series race, and I was a personable guy even as a 14-year-old. So I walked up to him like, "Hey, I'm Steven," and he's like, "Oh, Stephen Mallozzi," and I was too shy to correct him. So then when he hopped on the mic, he called me Mallozzi, and then everybody knew me as Mallozzi for the rest of the time I was in karting. And strangely enough, Josh Rayum grew up doing road tax kart racing just like I did. And he was kind of like my liaison into the NASCAR world. So he had actually seen clips of me race, and they had called me Mallozzi in those clips too. So he assumed that my name was Mallozzi. So then when I started meeting people in NASCAR, he'd introduce me as Stephen Mallozzi. And just like when I was in karting, I was kind of too afraid to be like, yeah, it's actually Mallozzi. So I kind of just let it run. And a lot of people.
Mallozzi.
Yeah, very Italian, very New Jersey Italian, which where I'm from.
That's awesome. Well, you fit right in there with Matthew D. and Benedetto. That's a tongue twister too, but it's still a beautiful name. I love it. It's true Italian. And well, welcome to the Kenny Conversation. Let's get right at it, my friend.
Let's do it.
There's so much to talk about, but yet you're so young. I'm going to read this off, and you tell me how wrong I am, how right I am.
Okay.
22 years old, started go-karts at 9 years old, won multiple Northeast go-kart championships. You've run 4 NASCAR Craftsman truck races. Is this correct?
Yes, it is, sir.
Well, you made national news, and you caught my eye for all the right reasons, because in this era, everybody sits back and they say, I can't make it in racing. I don't have any money. But the tweet that kind of rocked America was, and we'll have Charlie put it right here. It was incredible. You said, I went and ran the NASCAR Craftsman truck race at Martinsville. And you said the very next day, you were waiting tables at your job, Outback Steakhouse. Tell me all about this.
Yep. There are so many prongs to this story, Kenny, and I hope we can get to all of them in this one episode of Kenny Conversation. But that tweet in particular was nuts, because if you remember Martinsville, Not only I had a crap race, it was terrible. I was running good. I was learning a lot. It was my first ever oval start. Battery dies. And of course, it somehow ends up being the one short track race where everybody's running at the finish. So in the truck series too. So I finished last. And it was on and off rain delays. I ended up leaving the track at 12:30. And I lived at the time in my college apartment in Charlottesville, which is about 3 hours away. I went to University of Virginia for undergrad. I do the trek home by myself, alone, in the car. I drive myself back to my apartment. I get there at 3:30. I crash in my sweaty ass clothes that I had worn in the race underneath my fire suit, like the same piece, Kenny. And I wake up the next morning. I literally showered, got in the car, and went straight to Outback. And I'm standing there about midway through my shift, and I'm like, these people that I'm serving I'm literally handing them bloomin' onions. They have no idea that last night I was on TV in a NASCAR race. Like, here I am doing 120 miles an hour around Martinsville, and now I'm dropping off bloomin' onions, like taking drink orders. And it's like, I wonder if people ever know who's serving them. So I'm like, let me tell people what it's like to be a small-time racing driver who is also a college student, who's also trying to work a job and make a living, who's trying to find his way in the sport that he loves. So I'm like, let me craft a well-designed tweet. I'll take a picture of me in my Outback uniform, post a picture of the truck, and see what happens. And it exploded.
So let's do this like a major motion picture. Now, we told the end. That was the end of our movie. Let's talk about how you got there. Now, I spent a lot of time last night. As I always do, I have my notes. So, Rayoum Racing.
Yes, sir.
You and somebody else, I believe, another friend of yours, you went to work at Rayoum as crew members. Is this right?
So the way it all started, and I'll jump back even further. I'm going to go back and I'll go on a little storytelling break here, and I'll tell
okay.
Exactly
because people make so many excuses. I can't do it. I don't have no money. So this is why this is so important for the kids out there that think they cannot do it.
I was growing up, Kenny, I'll tell you, I was a little like that too. So when I was a kid, was 7 or 8, and I want to make this comment to you that I sent it over text to you when we were talking. One of the games that inspired my love of racing was NASCAR Thunder 2004. And I don't know how I always ran into you. You were in the 23 Stacker Dodge, and every freaking race I'd crash into you. Pissed me off, but eventually
I was a bad guy.
Eventually, Kenny, I go out and I win the I'm a 9-year-old kid, maybe 8. I win a championship on the game. I walk upstairs to my dad, who knows nothing about racing. Like, Dad, I am so good at these video games. I bet you I'd be good at it in real life. He takes me to an indoor rental track. We do that for years. Literally just go, pay $20, do a race, and leave. I racked up about 1,000 races at this indoor rental track, so much so that when I was 11 and 12, my dad would drop me off on Wednesdays, leave me there, and I would just run constantly. When I turned 13, Dad's like, I'm done. I don't want to spend any more money on this. I want to do something competitive. We get into competitive kart racing. And before you know it, I'm competing at a national level, like fighting for national championships. And it's pretty spectacular because while my dad spent a ton of money on my racing, he was not spending money like the people we were competing against.
When you say a ton of money, are you talking like people that live in a subdivision work, 9 to 5? Are you talking like $1,000, thousands?
So I'll give you the number. The year we spent the most on racing, it was 80 or 90,000. Okay. And that's a ton of money.
That's a lot of money.
There were people we were competing against, though, Kenny, who would spend millions. It was crazy. So we actually raced against Matthew and Nick Latifi, who Nick Latifi ended up in F1 and raced for Williams for all those years. Like,
I just watched the movie Gran Turismo. Yeah. It's your story, basically.
That's kind of what I feel like it is. Although I don't want to say that because 80 or 90 grand is a shitload of money. Let's not.
It's a lot of money.
So here I am. I get elected to Team USA, one of the best drivers in the country. They fly me out to Portugal to race. I'm Complete stud, Kenny. I'm not going to beat around the bush.
This is unbelievable. Well, I've said I'm the shit before too, so keep going.
When I am 16, I'm a sophomore in high school. Dad gets diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
6 months.
So sorry.
I am a 16-year-old high school student. Now, detractions aside, obviously from a racing standpoint, there's no way you can continue driving. Your life perspective changes, the financial situation changes, and I had way bigger problems to worry about. So I retire. I walk away from the sport. I stay involved. I broadcast a little bit. I do some commentary stuff, which coolly enough ended up getting me a job with ESPN years later. And I worked and I broadcasted college sports for Virginia, which was sweet. But I left, for the most part, I left racing. 5 years goes by. 5 years. We're now in 2021. So
5 years goes by because you lost your father. You were heartbroken.
Hold on. Let me tell you. We're gonna get there, Kenny. There's a big plot twist in this story. Okay? Dad's still around.
Oh.
Not only is he around at 5 years, he's still alive today. He's going to be in Bristol on Thursday.
Oh my God, I'm happy.
So, I'm elated. But this is where it comes from, okay? So before I'm a kid, Dad pays for all the bills in racing. Not as much as other kids, but he does it still, right? 2021 rolls around, and I'm in my room, and news is coming out about day. It's January. It's COVID. It's right around my birthday. And all this news about Daytona is coming out. And I'm pissed because another year's going by where I'm never going to know if I was really good enough to be a NASCAR driver. And I am just angry, being a little ass to my mom and ass to my dad, giving them the good old 1-2 teenage special where you're kind of not being very pleasant to be around.
Yeah. We've
Dad,
all been there.
What's up?
We've all
yeah.
We've been mean to our parents because we want what we want. We start crying.
Dad walks into my room, and my dad is a really cool-headed guy. He has a super long fuse. When it blows, he knows what to say. Walks in my room. He's like, "What the hell is your problem?" And I'm like, "Dad, I never got my shot to race in NASCAR." And he gets mad, like starts throwing his arms up, doesn't know what to say, starts to walk away, Kenny, turns around, gets right in my face, puts his finger right into my nose and says, "Son," can I swear on this show? Can I say, I'm going to say.
Well, you just can't say the F word.
Okay. So he uses the F word. I will say F word here. He puts his finger in my face and he goes, "Son, let me tell you something. If I treated my cancer the way you have treated racing in your life, I would have been dead 5 effing years ago."
Wow.
Turns around, walks away, does not say another word. And I remember sitting in my bed like, okay, here's this life event that has changed the trajectory of my life. It has kept me down for a while. I was upset about it. It's something we live with on a daily basis. My dad's quality of life has been altered. And here he is telling me to just get it together. Like, what are you doing? And I remember sitting in my bed and I'm like, well, now I got to try something. Like, what am I going to do? Sit here and complain? I emailed every single owner, whether it be Rick Hendrick or Josh Rayum, and I heard back from one.
Good for you.
That one owner was not Josh Rayum. And I won't even mention who it was. It was a truck team owner who invited me to go do a driver development program. Now, I started trying to find money to go do this, Kenny. And eventually I ended up emailing the Philadelphia 76ers broadcaster, who was my broadcasting hero and good pen pal of mine. His name is Mark Zuma. And Mark emails me back and is like, "I had no idea you were a race car driver." He's like, "That's awesome." He's like, "I know nothing about it, but let me connect you with one of my colleagues at NBC who does." That colleague was Michael Carey, who is now the social media director for SRX. Michael.
Yeah, I know him.
Yep. Michael says, "Okay, like I like your story." We went to a cheesesteak shop in Philly, got some cheesesteaks together.
Imagine that.
Yep. And he's like, I'm gonna get you connected with some people. Sends me on an email chain with Josh Rayum and a guy named Peter. I have no idea what Peter does, but the long and the short of it is Peter said, "Don't go do this program. Come to Charlotte and learn how NASCAR really works." 3 days later, I packed my bags and I drove to Charlotte. And there I was on Monday morning. I walked into RBR, which is Rayoon Brothers Racing, and that's how I met Josh Rayoon.
I'll be damned. What a journey. What a journey. You know, it reminds me a little bit. I mean, I was very lucky. My dad was a winning local race car driver. I wanted people would say to me, "You're not your brother." I'm like, look, I never wanted to be my brother. I just wanted to be a race car driver.
Yeah.
And the road to get to these places sometimes can be very similar. You know, Stephen, in 1989, let me back up. 1984, myself and Bobby Labonte, I ended up being the crew chief at 22 years old on the Levi Garrett car. And there I saw Bobby. Years later, 1989, we end up racing in the Xfinity Series together. These stories are amazing. So I guess the moral of the story is when we start our journey, whether we're going to be baseball, football, we know what our dream is, but we don't know exactly how to get there. And it sounds to me like that was what you went through.
Oh, yeah. And here's the thing. I never want to put my dad's cancer in a positive light, right? Like, that's not what I'm doing here. But at the end of the day, I totally acknowledge that if my dad hadn't have gotten sick, I'd probably never grow up as quickly as I do. I probably never gain the life perspective that I now have. And I probably never feel that inspiration and motivation to go to Charlotte. Because here's my dad doing this impossible thing, beating the odds. This cancer has a 97.5% death rate after 5 years. We're going on year 7. Like, it's crazy. And here I am telling him I can't become a NASCAR driver. Like, what the hell am I talking about? Let me get it together. So when I walked into Josh's office, I basically got a job for it, like an internship. It wasn't paid. But Kenny, I knew nothing about race cars, like not a damn thing.
So you'd already accomplished all this, go-kart champion, won all these, but you didn't really know about the car itself.
Yep. Yeah, and I knew, like, listen, let's be honest. I could work my way around a go-kart pretty well, but my dad had learned a lot of the mechanicking stuff. And like he's a lawyer from Pennsylvania. He knows nothing about race cars either. He did it because he loved doing it with me. And one of the coolest stories that I'll tell, and this will become pertinent later when we talk about Outback. But after every race weekend, my dad and he'd be the mechanic, I'd be the driver. Good or bad, win or lose, we'd find an Outback Steakhouse to go eat at. It was our tradition. We loved it. We would go to Outback after every race. That's why later in the story, I end up getting let go from my job at Domino's as a delivery driver because I had too many speeding tickets. I know, the irony, right? I'm like, what's the closest job to pizza delivery I can think of? Serving. What's my favorite restaurant? Outback. There's one not too far from here. Let me go get a job at Outback.
So I love Outback, and who doesn't? It's very easy. It's a great restaurant. I would go to Outback, believe it or not, sometimes for their tilapia, because my family has a history of heart attacks and clogged up arteries. So, tilapia, sweet potato, nice salad. But I know it's legendary for blooming onions and great steaks. So, okay, where we're at now. So you're working there as a waiter at Outback. How do you get the phone number? How do you know? Who tells you? Do you Google it? Do you ask the store manager? Because now you're going to Bristol this week to run in the truck series at Bristol, and you got Outback on your truck. Is this a franchise sponsor, corporate sponsor?
This is a corporate sponsor.
Okay, that's big.
So this is here's how it went down. Okay. When I sent this tweet, and this has been my specialty, right? I'm good at targeted marketing. I'm great at finding people and being like, okay,
that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
So all throughout my career, I mean, you've looked at my sponsors. A lot of them are small companies that are somewhat close to where they're going to end up, right? Like that's what you got to find. And a lot of times I've leveraged connections and this and that to get the money to go race. I've kind of just figured it out as I go. I've done anything. Kenny, I even sold my car to keep racing. Like I
read that last night.
We'll have the conversation here in a minute if you want. But the Outback thing was nuts because after I saw it was blowing up, I went online and I tried to find on LinkedIn the highest ranked Outback marketing executive I could find.
Good job.
And I found, I believe, their director of marketing, and I saw that she had a Twitter. And not only did she have a Twitter, but it's a somewhat active Twitter.
Yeah, right.
But she doesn't have a lot of followers, and it's very clear that people don't know that she's the director of marketing for Outback. So after the tweet started going viral, I tagged her.
Oh.
And apparently, I remember, here's basically what happened, Kenny. I walked into work one day for my shift, and there's the proprietor of my store is basically like a general manager. It's not really that important. He's like, listen, man. He's like, I got to talk to you. I'm like, oh my God, did I do something to get me fired? He's like, no. He's like, it's actually great news. He's like, Outback noticed you. He's like, I got a phone call from my boss saying that someone in the corporate marketing department had reached out to see what we could do to help you in your racing career. And the whole thing for Outback is it's all about the relationship between employee and employer. Like they love
this is the way it is.
Yeah. And it's great because to have a company that loves their employees the way that Outback does is great. And it's like a big family, man. Like I know it's tough to believe with a corporation, but the way that everything's been handled and the way that everything's gone, it's been phenomenal. So over the next few months, basically, like I got further and further up. I kept getting handed off until I got to the woman who's now my liaison at Outback. And she's one of the execs at the corporate level who helps. There's a lot of support from the regional side, right? Because obviously, like when you're in Bristol, it makes sense to do some local activation in the Bristol area. They wanted to do some local activation stuff in my home store, which is in Charlottesville. They wanted to do some local activation stuff in my home store in Deptford, New Jersey. But like at the end of the day, this is a corporate sponsorship. If you look at their national Twitter page, they're tweeting about it from the national perspective. I don't know how much I could talk about contract details, but like it's definitely
that's up to you. But I would, I would just say this: I've got all my own sponsors my whole career.
Yeah,
and there's an old saying, Stephen: speed costs. How fast do you want to go? So if you're going to go one of the best trucks, it's $100,000 a race.
I wish it was that cheap these days.
If you want to go with a team that's going to get 2 sets of tires and you're $40,000 a race.
Yeah. And honestly, Kenny, that's what I've been doing. Like it's been that way. Like I'll also add this. I am pretty confident that I am the least experienced driver to ever get behind the wheel in a National Series race in NASCAR history. When I made my debut last year, Kenny, I basically didn't know how to shift on a road course. Like that's how inexperienced, and I finished 22nd. And like it's an easy thing to learn how to do once you get behind the wheel. But I maybe had the money that I had saved up through working all these hours each and every week and working at RBR to do 6 or 7 late model races.
You are the epitome of, Ricky Craven doesn't have a family that has a lot of racing background. William Byron, it is true that somebody like you, the mom and dad don't know nothing about racing, and there's the kid. I mean, you are this story. Lucky me, I kind of feel guilty right now. I grew up in a racing family, but we did it for a hobby.
Yeah.
Your story's pretty incredible that you're becoming a race car driver just because your dad loves you. Okay, son, let's go to the go-kart track.
Yep. And that's it. At the end of the day, that's it. And like the point I'm at now, Kenny, with the whole thing is my objective when I started doing this was my dad, this is really it. My dad said something that really pissed me off, lit a fire underneath me. And I went to show, hey, you committed all of your time and effort to raising me and giving me these racing experiences. It's my turn to show you I'm going to put the time and effort back in to make you proud. And then when I made that start last year at Mid-Ohio, I was kind of like, I did it. I'm good. And then
second, is that right?
Yes.
And then second in your truck debut.
Yeah. And by the way, that was for Josh Rayum and Rayum Brothers Racing, which we're a small team, man. 22nd for us. I think that was our best finish in the second half of the year.
That's a good finish.
That's a good finish. We didn't buy all the tires. Like there's a lot of things that go into it. I am not spending $100,000 a race to do this, man. Like it's nuts when you're competing with people, and people don't seem to understand this concept about racing. And the best way I can describe it is, if you and I went out and we wanted to just have a drag race on the street, and I gave you $175,000 to go buy a car, and you gave me $25,000 to go buy a car, does it matter who's the better driver? No, you're going to win the drag race every damn time. And that's kind of like the most accurate, simple comparison you can make to how NASCAR racing works. And I would love to one day get enough support, get enough backing to the point where I am spending money to try and get into a top tier ride to win races. But there's 3 prongs to that. 1, you got to find the money first. 2, I would love to only use those opportunities when I feel like as a driver, I have enough experience to do something with it. And 3, I need to not be in law school while I'm doing it, because let me tell you something, law school and racing at the same time is damn near killing me.
So you know what happens in life is, I've taken sports therapy before, and we never say, we know it's out there, and we remind people, but we don't talk about it all the time. In other words, myself, Kenny Wallace, you're an okay race car driver. Well, when Steve Park got hurt, I got in the Pennzoil car, set quick time in the Cup Series, led the whole race run second. Now, okay, that's because I got in a good car, but I got it right here. Carl Edwards. Nobody knew who the hell he was. He comes to Indianapolis Raceway Park. And I'm like, who is this guy? He's handing out business cards. If you're looking for a driver, I'm the driver. Steven, this is the way Carl Edwards became a NASCAR Cup driver. It was handing business cards out. So your story is not far-fetched. It's pretty incredible, but you are so far and few between. Your story is incredible.
Thank you. And like I take a lot of pride in I do, Kenny. I take a lot of pride in the fact that, hey, a lot of these kids in the garage these days are, I want to be careful.
Say it, it's fine.
There's a lot of nepotism there. Like, it's a lot of, okay, dad owns a company. I can write it off. And in reality, I'm spending half the money that I really would be to get in this ride. And it's advertising, like I got it. And they're signing the bills. You crash the truck, they pay the bill. It is why we see such a lack of respect in NASCAR today. It's because a lot of the kids who are driving the equipment aren't paying to fix it. Yeah. Mom and dad are. And that's like that. When I go out there, Kenny, if I total a truck, okay, if I total a truck because of something I can't control, it is what it is, right? It happens. It's racing. If I total a truck because I'm a jackass, that's the end of my career. I can't afford to fix that. I don't have the money to spend another $50,000 to repair a truck that's absolutely totaled. And I really just got to keep the nose clean and learn how to drive. And like, I think if more people had that experience when they're climbing through the ranks, we'd see so much more respect in NASCAR than we do today.
When I came around, people would, sponsorships were plentiful. The teams always got the sponsorships. When I came along, I knew that the only way I could stay a race car driver, because I always call myself a B minus race car driver. So the only way to stay in the seat is get your own damn money.
Yeah.
And now that's what the complete sport is about. Maybe Kyle Larson is the only one that is racing on talent alone. But nowadays, like you're saying, if you want to race, you got to bring money, and the corners are going, where's your money?
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be a combo deal. And it's not, it truly is crazy, because could you imagine if the NFL were based on how much money you could bring?
That's funny.
That'd be nuts. We would not be watching, Pat Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. We'd be watching some random ass kids throwing footballs 30 yards instead of
Aaron Rodgers got hurt on the third play last night, but he's still going to get his 20-30 million for the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we understand the difference between all these sports. So let's wrap it up by, you're going to Bristol this weekend. Tell me, I see you're racing. Is it called AM Racing?
Yes, that is correct.
You're racing for AM Racing, number 22, your age.
Yep.
That would be a Darrell Waltrip cliche. Hey, 22 years old, running number 22. Tell me about this week. How do you feel? Have you been to Bristol? Tell me all this.
So a lot of things. First things first. Got it. And the AM deal is largely brokered by Josh, and Josh has been so helpful and instrumental in everything I've ever done in my racing career. So I think I need to always talk about him when I get the chance. Josh Broom is like a father to me. And I think that just needs to be out of the way so I could say it and make sure I get it clear.
I understand. My brother Rusty. I wouldn't be where I'm at without my brother Rusty. I've yelled his name from the rooftop ever since I've started racing.
So this is my third race with AM. I'm excited to be back with them. But I have never been to Bristol. And I am super duper. I watched tons of onboard this week. Unfortunately, with all the other stuff I'm doing between, I would do my own PR. I do my own contracts. I do my own everything.
You're busy getting money.
Yeah, I don't hire anybody to do any of this stuff.
Neither do I.
And it's and it's like super duper a lot to handle. But right, the time that I do have, I am spending like watching the Bristol onboard footage, and it's crazy. It's like you're getting back to throttle, and you can't see the corner because of how banked it is. And I'm like, holy moly, that's going to be friggin' something for the first 5 laps. So I'm a little nervous, especially because, there are a couple things that you got to realize. One, when you're running a little bit closer to the back, you lose a lot of laps at tracks like this, which increases the chance that you're going to be involved in some chaos, which is always a scary prospect. 2, I've never been on anything close to this banked in my life. You think about the racetracks I've done. Martinsville, literally 0 banking. Mid-Ohio,
road course.
It's a road course. Pocono, turn 1's got a little. Turn 2 and 3 doesn't really have that much. Not really. Gateway, turn 3 and 4 has no banking really. And turns 1 and 2 is like super, I guess it's kind of steep. But none of them are anything like Bristol. And I've been to Bristol before. I've been to the racetrack. I've actually worked a couple of races for Josh there. Just looking at the banking is intimidating. I mean, you see it and you're like staggered. I mean, obviously you know this, Kenny, but like I'm talking for anybody watching who might not have been to Bristol before. It's insane. Yeah,
I'm one of the best at Bristol, and my brother is the best. And my advice to you would be, the great Dick Trickle taught it to me. You must first finish to finish first. But you got to keep up the speed there, or else you will get in trouble. And when you go out to practice, you're gonna make some laps, and you're gonna come in and you're gonna look at that monitor and you're gonna go, holy crap, I'm 2 seconds off. And then you're gonna work up to it. But my advice to you is, you don't want to go to a backup truck. You're in a unique situation where you don't have a big ass team. Get in the race. Now, are you locked in the race?
Basically, yeah. It would take, I think we're ahead of 8 or 9 trucks on the entry list in points, and only 2 are going home. So I think it'd be tough to miss.
When you qualify, you're going to be cheating death. And I mean that. Okay. But when you drop the green flag for the race, there's trucks in front of you, trucks behind you. you can't run that warp speed.
Yeah.
So now the vehicle starts handling different. And then it becomes a short track race. You go to Bristol, you're qualifying warp speed, and then you're racing around each other, and then you got to, handling's everything. But okay. How close is the switching subjects? How close is the Outback Steak Restaurant to Bristol Motor Speedway?
So the one that I'll be making an appearance at the Bristol Outback from 11 to 1 on race day. It's about 10 minutes from the racetrack.
Is race day Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yep. Very excited. I'm like, I know I said a lot about being nervous. I also want to make it clear I'm elated. And like, this is a sweet deal for me. And even let's say this is it. This is Outback's sponsorship of me. That's more than I ever expected to get out of them. One.
That's awesome.
Two, it's so cool for them to support somebody like me in my life journey. But three, even more valuable than the money they're giving me to get to Bristol, which is hugely valuable, obviously, is the fact that look at who I'm talking to. Like, I got interview requests from Barstool, from Fox Sports, from Kenny Wallace himself.
Stop it.
People are noticing this story, and it's building a brand. And now when you go to other sponsors and you're like, hey, like, look at this. Outback is a Fortune 500 company, or Bloomin' Brands is a Fortune 500 company. And here they are. They've got my back. I'm like, that shows that I'm someone worth backing. And I think it will do wonders for my career. And I hope it does wonders for my career as I continue to try and navigate this NASCAR journey.
Well, Stephen, we're already at 40 minutes in Kenny Conversation. We like to keep it right at an hour. Let me just say this, my friend. I love you to death. What got me where I'm at is my mouth. You've got a mouth like me. We are not short of talking. You are a lover. You mean well. You're super excited. You're a true Italian. I hear the passion in your voice. I love you. Do good. And I would say this, and this is so positive. Our careers in our life, we know it's a journey, but you got stair steps. And let's say there's 22 steps. And right now, to me, you're like on the third step. You're new. You have so much to look forward to. And congratulations. You are, we're going to make sure we yell from the top of the moon so everybody hears your story, because this is very encouraging. And
thank you.
Do good.
I will certainly do my best. And let me tell you something. You're in Missouri now, you said?
Yeah.
If I'm ever in Missouri, you got to buy me a beer. But if you're ever in New Jersey, I'll take care of you, okay? You give me a ring.
That's easy. That's easy. Well, listen, everybody. There he is, Stephen Mallozzi, one of the biggest stories in America right now, because he doesn't have any money. His dad spent it all on him. What a story. It's the start of a journey. And remember, we are in podcast form. iTunes, Spotify. Listen to this story on your way to work, on your way back home. And Kenny Conversation just keeps on rolling. We got Kyle Petty in the pipeline. We got Kurt Busch in the pipeline. Stephen, thank you so much.
Of course. We'll talk soon.